I used to work with this dude who rode like bucking broncos, and he was like falling apart. He would tell me about how like he had like, numbness in his feet and like, all these like really strange health issues that
The guy who worked with Broncos.
yeah, like he was like a rodeo guy. So it's like, yeah, you definitely you really beat your hips and everything else up. And now you're like in your 40s. And
For a brief stint, I did roustabout work in the oil field, and like the guys I was paired with, like one was a super old guy, and like every other day he was talking about going to the doctor for this or for that, and basically they were both like, they were assholes, but at the end of the day they were the ones that were like, what are you doing here, kid? Like you gotta be like, get the fuck out of here, go to school, like you don't want this.
Yeah, you could do something else.
Yeah, they were dicks though. I would always like fall asleep in the truck, and they'd always be like, "Wah!" They'd like fucking harass me, like wake me up and shit, and I get so pissed.
Yeah,
When you're in that liminal space between sleep and awake, and like
your
emotions are just way more heightened. Or at
and
least
you're ready to jump,
Yeah, so it's just like I get so
Get
pissed. And they're just fucking assholes.
It's probably because
that's all they got.
Yeah,
they ain't got nothing else going on.
And they're probably in constant physical pains.
Yeah. I don't want to give them any excuses for being a dickhead.
No, dude, that's the joke. I always used to work. I've had some, like blue collars type jobs, and like that's always kind of, it's like, I remember having this coworker where like, he's always complaining about his back, and I remember me and one of our other coworkers for a while, we would like try to be constructive, and be like, you ever tried like yoga? And be like, no, I'm not doing fucking yoga. And it's like, well then maybe don't complain about it constantly if you're not going to do anything
on you, asshole.
Like stretch or something.
Yeah. Yeah, people just... Well, Elliot Broder on, aka Mike Hawkburns.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, local comedian. You've been around a long time.
Yeah. I've been in Denver for probably like kind of on and off for 10 years or so.
From Alabama though, right?
Yeah. I guess I came, pretty much moved out here straight out of living in from college, where I was in Auburn University. So pretty much came out, like my first job out of school, I was traveling a lot. And then
doing what?
So I studied like fish biology. And so I was working for an environmental contractor, and I was just collecting data for government agencies.
You'd be like a character in Spider-Man. I've been watching a lot of Spider-Man, the animated series.
Yeah.
And there's always like the one-off episode where he's like the fish biologist guy who's like working with radiation and fish. And then he's like half fish, half, and then you become the villain that was like doing aquatic crimes.
Probably. I mean, I definitely can see the path once you get into working for like, like a contractor of the government, because you like, you kind of like, I can see why people get frustrated in that role, because you like...
And turn to crime.
Maybe not, yeah. Yeah, I mean, basically, not really turn to crime, but working within the kind of existing mechanisms to do the right thing can be pretty frustrating. It's like, it just takes a long time. 3 steps forward, 1 step back kind of a thing,
To do what?
Like to do a conservation action.
Okay.
Like if we want to stop a company from destroying the environment, the legal process is just, it's a time consuming process, whereas it'd be way easier to just, when they pull their equipment, to just burn it all,
So what's the process? you're in Alabama, there's a river you like, and you're like, and then there's a factory that's dumping shit in there or something,
Right. Which that isn't really like what I did, but basically like, I worked for a company that we did a lot of like permitting. So it's like, like let's say even further back than that, it's like, hey, we want to build this factory, or we want to build this transmission line of electricity, and we have to do a study to determine how that will affect the environment, basically. And then if you want to stop us, then you have to probably like do your own environmental impact, and then we have to kind of go to court.
So you have to prove that it would be bad for the environment first, and then you have to go to court to battle it out with them.
Yeah, and then a lot of times what's really sad is sometimes you prove like it will be bad for the environment, but they have an option to just pay a bunch of money, kind of.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so they could just kind of pay a replacement. Like if there's another group that's already like I did a lot of wetland work. So like if you destroy a wetland, you're not really supposed to.
Like what's a wetland?
A wetland is just, it's a place where there's like water close to the surface of the ground.
Like a marsh.
Yeah,
a
like
bog.
a marsh counts, a bog, a swamp, like a floodplain even, like where the water gets out of the banks of the river. or a place where just water pools, like a detention pond, or maybe like a place where like in Colorado, we have a lot of these where when the snow melts and a space kind of fills up with water and then it slowly dries out.
Sloan's Lake.
Yeah, well, Sloan's Lake, used to be.
That's a man-made lake.
It is, but it kind of, from my understanding, it used to just be a swampy area, and a farmer was digging and he hit a spring.
Oh, okay.
And it became Sloan's Lake.
Interesting.
Sloan's Leak is what they called it at first because it was just leaking. But basically, like if you, yeah, this is weird. We're already getting into the weeds.
No, I mean, yeah, this is interesting stuff.
But basically, yeah. So if you're not really supposed to destroy wetlands because they're like really important. It filters our water, and there's a lot of like crucial habitat for like amphibians and stuff, frogs and salamanders, and a lot of birds need that. It's just kind of a unique habitat.
Okay.
And so they have a program though where if you want to destroy some wetland, if someone else has like made wetland, you can kind of just pay for like what they call a wetland credit. So if basically that's the frustrating thing about the environmental world is that like there's they've built a lot of like exceptions for people that just have money and want to build stuff. And then so it's, I can see why people get frustrated doing that work because if people have enough money, they can kind of just pay their way to do whatever they want,
Mm-hmm.
But I really liked working in wetlands because it's, I think in this country at least, it's like the most pristine habitat that like is left because people just don't want to really spend time there. So like if you go into like, if you climb a mountain, like that's a popular thing to do. So you always see people, you always see trash, but nobody wants to just go like wander around in a swamp. So,
so it's just,
there's a sort of pristineness to it that I think is kind of like hard to come by, at least in the lower 48 anymore.
Yeah.
Like to really get where you don't see any signs of human activity in this day and age, like you almost can't anymore.
Yeah.
But sometimes in a wetland, you can.
Are you just going out there with your sneakers and just getting them all wet, or are you getting what you got to get?
I was wearing waders always,
which is like just plastic overalls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they come up to like your chest, and
could you sink in that? Like, is there like a risk of quicksand type situation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
There
like,
is?
Oh yeah, having to dig yourself out of the mud was like, I mean, you're not gonna die like in movies, but
there's no chance of that.
Well, there's not no chance. There's always a chance. But yeah, I mean, definitely you occasionally get in really mucky areas. And then like
so more mud than water? What mucky? It's all mucky.
It's all mucky. Well, so what happens a lot, man, I'm getting really weird.
Dude, this
really
is great. I'm interested in this. Like, yeah, I want to go out and do a wetland.
What happens a lot in like a wetland is like, because it's always underwater, it like stuff just breaks down differently. So instead of having like just a solid bottom, you'll have a bunch of stuff that's like in the process of becoming mud.
Yeah, it's like breaking down.
It's like breaking down vegetation, but it's happening slowly. And so sometimes the muck is actually like, it's not really mud, it's like plant muck. It's like broken down plants and things. And sometimes it's spongy, and sometimes you do have to kind of dig yourself out. I mean,
I've never. You have a shovel that you carry around with you?
Absolutely, because you have to look at the soil as well. So sometimes you're just in a muddy ass area, and you're supposed to try to dig like a hole of a certain depth to like, classify the soil. And so it's like, it's kind of an interesting job. But for me, when I first started doing wetland stuff, like as a kid, that was what I loved, was like making mud pies and like, digging and just getting filthy. Like I just enjoyed that. And so I kind of tapped back into that when I started doing wetland work, because it's like, there's no staying clean. So you eventually just accept I'm going to be covered in mud every day. And then you kind of enjoy it and you start getting your hands in there and,
Yeah. So being dirty doesn't bother you.
It does not. And I think no, not at all. And especially with wetlands, like you're doomed. Like there's no way you're going to stay clean.
It's a losing battle.
It's a losing battle for sure. And so you just kind of accept a certain layer of filth. But yeah, I guess we started this whole conversation because I was talking about how I got to Colorado, which
no, this is interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, basically the company I worked for had an office in like the DC area, and they had an office in Golden. So after my first summer with them, I just happened to be traveling in Colorado, and my old boss followed up because he was like, "Hey, we want to hire you next summer." And I was like, "I'm in Colorado actually." And he's like, "Oh, well, hey, we might be hiring someone in Colorado." And I was like, cool, let's do that. So I worked out of their Golden office, and I was a field scientist. Like all summer, I would just kind of be out in the woods, collecting data for them, for various agencies. And that's what brought me to Colorado, really. And then at first, I wouldn't get a winter job. Like I would put in a lot of hours in the summer, and then I would try to do comedy all winter without having maybe I'd do part-time, but usually if I worked enough like overtime and stuff, I'd be able to kind of have a couple months where I was
like, I stayed out in the bog for 10 hours today making mud pies. So
I got
some overtime
stacked a little.
I think the wetlands thing isn't really interesting. And if you don't want to talk about it, I
guess,
I'm
totally down to, as long as it actually interests you.
Purpose of going in there is what do you get out of going into the box?
So the
fish that are there, the wildlife.
So the first survey that I worked on was part of this big national survey that the federal government has been doing for a long ass time. So basically, like the first surveys that I worked on were just kind of these general health assessments, because when the
health of the land,
of like the nationwide resources.
Okay.
And the idea is that they're collecting this data to see if like the laws have been effective. Like is the health of these environments improving? Is it decreasing? Staying the same? Because when they first passed like the Clean Water Act and stuff, they were like, how are we going to know if this is working?
When did that pass?
The Clean Water Act passed in the 60s. It was during the 1967 or 68.
That just meant like we have a right to clean water.
Yeah. The Clean Water Act more or less said that like the federal government has jurisdiction over like a lot of the fresh water in the United States, and basically just set these baseline of like, it's a very complicated and big law, but the basics is that like, hey, you can't purposefully pollute the water.
Okay.
More or less. Like you have to maintain a particular water standard, and like it also set up like water use. Like you can't just take water out of a river. It set up guidelines for all that kind of a thing, for like who was allowed to use the water, what the water use could be like, and then about polluting and stuff like that. So the Clean Water Act, it did a bunch of stuff, but they wrote that law in response to the Chicago shipping and sanitary canal caught on fire in the 60s. So like the
canal caught on fire.
Yeah, it was so polluted that
water caught on fire.
The whole river, like there was just I guess oil or something. They just were dumping it. And so after that, everybody was like, whoa. Like exactly how you responded. They're like, yeah, this is not good. The government needs to probably make sure this doesn't happen. And so then,
whoa, big government? What?
I know, right?
You want to keep the government in our water?
So they made a big list of stuff you couldn't dump in the water, and
fluoride.
Mm-hmm. And then, well, yeah. But then they also set up like, so basically after that, they were like, well, how are we going to know if this is working or not? And so then they set up this program of surveys that the EPA now runs. And
EPA,
the Environmental Protection Agency, which is a bad word in the West. People hate the EPA. But the thing about it
is... You think Colorado's the West?
The Mountain West.
Okay, just curious. I mean, that's been a big debate on the pod.
Yeah, I know. I consider it the West. It's very west of where I grew up,
Okay, gotcha.
But we were just talking about this earlier because some people consider Colorado Midwest.
Yeah.
I like the term Mountain West.
You were talking about it on your podcast, Wolf Hawk, that you do with Lizzie Wolfson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we very frequently have that discussion of like, where are you from? And then some people say, I'm from the Midwest. And you're like, well, what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
Like Michigan?
Yeah. Previous guest on the pod, Ethan Everhart, has some hard lines on what is considered the Midwest.
How he defines it.
Yeah. And a lot of it's like regional stores.
Oh, yeah. If you have a Winn-Dixie or whatever.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
If you've got a Menards.
I think that's the one he's talking about.
Dude, you save big money at Menards.
Because we went to Nebraska a week ago, and he was like, that's Midwestern or something like that. And I was like, I don't even know what the fuck that is.
It was like a Nebraska store.
Yeah, it was Menards or something.
Menards.
Like that.
Yeah, dude. Menards that's like their, I think they have them in Indiana. Yeah.
I guess they're bigger in the Midwest. But anyway, EPA is a bad word, is what you're saying.
In a lot of places, they've kind of gotten to this bad name.
Go ahead.
Well,
you're talking about things breaking down under the water. And I was recently in Venice this past year. And I was like looking up how they made, how everything stays up, because in Italy, it's like with the canals and everything, and all the stuff was built on islands.
Yeah. They artificially raised the land up in a lot of places.
Yeah. So
right?
I was watching a video where it said that they cut down a bunch of trees and put timber, like they just hammered it into the mud. I mean, which is kind of like a wetlands area. You know, so they just hammered it in there. And so everything's built on these wooden, beams that
never really hit bedrock. They just sunk them down.
They sunk them down, and that they don't rot because there's no air.
Yeah.
So do things break down underwater, or does it not break down underwater?
Like so usually it kind of doesn't. And so like,
because it's an organic material, it's wood.
Basically, yeah. So the presence of oxygen makes it break down faster. Yeah.
Right.
So if it's completely under the water, then it takes it a long time to break down.
So it's not that it's not breaking down, it's just that it's taking a long time.
It takes a really long time, yeah. And that's also why, like, in fossils, like, a lot of, like, mud areas produce really good fossils. Because stuff just gets kind of, like, encased in mud, and then it just takes it forever to actually, like, break down. I've heard the water's kind of stinky in some places.
Yeah, it's not, it can't get,
And
especially when it gets hot. Do you want to watch this video real quick?
I would love to, yeah.
The year is 452. The Roman Empire is on
Did
the
you
brink
look this
of
up after you got
collapse,
back?
and the
Or
Huns have just launched their
so the whole
attack
time
on
there,
Northern
you were just
Italy.
guessing.
Several cities are completely destroyed.
I was a little
forcing the
distracted by other things,
Yeah,
but
you're
but I
enjoying
was just
the
like, oh, this is
sights.
interesting. This is interesting.
locals to go on the run. They head for a lagoon just off the coast and take refuge on several small islands, a decision that would no doubt save their lives. Against all odds, this small civilization eventually went on to build one of the most impressive feats of engineering the world has ever seen, Venice. Despite having no roads, no land, and no fresh water, the Venetians managed to turn a muddy swamp into the most powerful and wealthiest city of its time. This unique layout of canals and bridges woven through hundreds of islands made Venice incredibly accessible, and it became the epicenter of all business. We modeled the entire thing to show you what's going on beneath the surface and how its clever design and medieval engineering allowed it to take over the world. When the first refugees arrived to start their new lives on the islands, they had the worst possible surface to build on. The small, marshy islands were made of an incredibly soft clay, which would barely hold the weight of a human, let alone an entire city. To create stable foundations for buildings, the Venetians collected large timber piles from the forests of Croatia and started hammering them into the ground. They drove them about 5 meters deep until they reached a much harder layer of clay.
Okay, so they
Not
at least
only
did
did this
sink them into
stabilize the
something.
piles, but by packing them really close together, it compressed the surrounding clay, pushing out the water and making it much stronger. Once the piles were firmly in the ground, the tops were cut off and wooden planks were laid on top to spread the load. Special blocks of Istrian stone were then placed to raise the foundations above the water. This design was a stroke of genius, as the wooden piles were sealed away from the air, making it impossible for them to rot. To this day, almost all of the original piles are in great condition.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's accurate. I mean, impossible. I mean, it will happen eventually, but it also depends. It sounds too like they're pretty much encased in the clay, so that's kind of like a double layer.
Gotcha.
But, I also like ocean, that being like an oceanic, like it's salt water around it. So it's probably even slower to break down, whereas freshwater, I would say that it might happen a little faster depending upon.
There's more bacteria or something in there.
And different types of bacteria and stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, I just thought this was super interesting. I was
so
like, this is great. I mean, could we do this somewhere here, you think? I mean, this is like where you're just playing around in like a marsh, and then they're just like, let's build
pretty
fucking
much
house on top of this shit.
I mean, the times that I have done work in like coastal wetlands, they have like this mud down there they call pluff, and it's like the fluffiest mud you've ever seen. It's like, it has like the consistency
of like
more
air, or what do you mean? What makes it fluffy?
I don't even know how it happens. I think it's just because it's such a fine silt.
Yeah, because what I'm thinking about, the only comparison I have is like snow. So people are like, oh, we got really fluffy POW here.
Yeah,
in Colorado versus some like a coastal,
like the East Coast.
Yeah,
where they
East
just have
Coast is
ice.
just like ice. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I would say it's kind of the same concept. It's like it
because we have no humidity. It's just like it doesn't I don't know, form the same. There's like more air, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the coastal stuff, it probably also has to do with the tide, that like each tide deposits little bits and there's space in between. But you know, I remember being in ones for work where it's like it's almost like you're swimming in the stuff. You know, like you almost can't, like, you kind of just have to lay out,
quicksandy,
spread out. I would say, yeah, I would call it quicksandy for sure.
And would you die in it?
I want
to know quicksand is an actual danger. You know, from all the things we watched as kids, where quicksand was a real threat. To our way of life.
I mean, that was definitely something I was concerned about when I first started doing wetlands. You know, I thought I would just get swallowed up.
You always had a whip ready to like
to a rope.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, you'll sink really well, but you never really get more than a few feet down.
Okay.
You know, from my experience at least. But
I'm a heavier guy. I'd go a little bit further than you.
I mean, the coastal stuff would be the place where it could happen. Not that you would necessarily like sink all the way and where you couldn't get out, but you could get in there so deep that you're pretty well stuck, and then you have a tide situation, you know, where you got to dig out as the water's coming in, which would be horrifying.
Yeah, that would be so.
Like I'm not afraid of. Well, I have a healthy fear of water as someone who's worked around it, but like
that's good.
The ocean's a different beast.
Me too.
The ocean's a different animal. Like, you know, it's been in the news that like this billionaire's mega yacht went down. I don't know if you heard about this, but like last week, I think a billionaire in this like really expensive and high tech like sailing boat, it went down, and there's a lot of, you know, people are like, wow, you know, like even this really expensive boat, this guy that apparently knows what he's doing, you know, the ocean is ruthless, you know?
Yeah. Can get you.
It'll get you. Even if you
storm.
Have a really expensive boat.
You got to respect it.
But I don't really do a lot of coastal work. I mean, most of my stuff's been freshwater, and that's like my area of expertise for sure, is like.
You like canoeing?
Yeah.
Whitewater rafting? I did that recently, and now I have more of a respect for the water. I mean, I do enjoy like rowing down a lazy river.
Yeah.
But I got mad at and I kind of discussed this on the last pod, so I'll kind of.
Yeah, but the guide was mean
I got
to you.
mad at the guide because he was just so like, let's fucking go on the meaty parts because we got two big guys and they could just like, you guys get in the front, and I was getting splashed with water the whole time. I lost the contact. And he's like, let's get out and swim around. And one of the people in the fucking boat couldn't swim, but she did it anyway because everybody else wanted to do it, and I didn't want to be the wet blanket or the dry blanket that didn't jump on it.
Did you go here in Colorado?
Yeah, we went Canyon City and did it.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that's like Salida.
Yes,
area. So it's like the Arkansas River, probably. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, dude. And I fucking jumped in because I think he didn't realize how like I'm bigger than him. So like I'm gonna sink more. He's like, yeah, jump into the middle of the river. And I was like, what? He's like, you jump in and then like float. And I was like, and when do I start swimming? Will my feet get carried under the current and then I get fucking killed because like I get pulled down or whatever, you know, and like I can't get back up. And he's like, oh, you just float and then you start swimming. I'm like, do I let my feet dangle in front of me for a while? He's like, yeah, until you can see I'm like, you're not fucking like
walk me through it.
Yeah, I was like, dude, you gotta really fucking.
He was when I jumped in,
I fucking sank like a rock, dude. I fucking, even with my life jacket on, when I jumped in, I went down, dude. Like I was like, I sunk to the bottom. Like I didn't hit it. I mean, but I fucking, And so like, and I was just pissed the whole time because like, I guess I didn't respect it enough because I was thinking it was gonna be like a pool. But when I got up, I was trying to breathe and like water just kept splashing in my face, and I was just swallowing water the whole time. And I'm like, I fucking hate this. I hate this guy. Dude. So I was like, okay, this is a real situation now. Like this was not like shit could go sideways. You know, like it happens.
Yeah.
And I was upset about that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think rafting is one of those things where I do think the guide makes or breaks it.
I mean, he was fine, but also I was upset that he like put me in more danger than I wanted to be that day.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think like, but if you had a guide, I mean, not that you didn't have a good time, but with a different guide, you might have had like an awesome time.
Yeah, the first time I did it, I had a really good time, and that's why I was like, oh, I would like to do it again.
Well, the Arkansas is a little bit bigger river too. Like I don't know where you did it the first time, but
the first time I did it up by Idaho Springs.
Yeah, so that's a lot smaller. That's like Clear Creek, which is like you know.
Yeah,
you can see both sides.
Yeah.
They're really close the whole time.
I mean, I could see. Yeah, Arkansas.
The Arkansas. I mean, not that you can't see across, but it's definitely like Like if you fall in the middle, it's going to be some work to get to the side in some,
it was
some sections.
It was work.
Yeah.
And like, it was intense. It got intense.
I believe it.
And that
yeah.
scared me. And then of course I'm angry because something I heard recently is anger is fear in public or something like that. And I was like, that's so true.
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, as a man in the South, anger is all the emotions, really.
The only emotion.
The only one you get.
You show.
Yeah. Anger and, that's it pretty much. Anger and love of football. I love sports.
But yeah, sorry. Going back to, I don't know, something you said about being on the river or something, and that got me to.
No, yeah, that's one of the things that I found kind of interesting. And on Wolfhawk, we ask a lot about different outdoor activities, if people have done them or if they're open to doing them. And a lot more people are afraid of whitewater rafting than I would have anticipated.
Well, all you hear is horror stories.
I guess you do.
You only hear like we took the inner city kids out to water rafting and one of them died.
Yeah, I mean, people definitely. I mean, people
do die.
People do die.
It's a thing.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the same thing with snowboarding or whatever. You know, people hit trees or people get fucking stuck in tree wells and shit.
Yeah,
which is also stuff that's happened to me. Snowboarding.
You got stuck in a
dude. Yeah, it sucks.
And like the little melted area
scary,
around the tree.
Yeah,
because you have to just scale.
Because if you don't know what a fucking tree well is, it's like the snow around the tree, like the branches. You know, you fall into the middle where
so you're
the base
basically in
is.
like a hole.
Yeah, you're in a hole. And like if you're snowboarding or whatever, you fall in, you could be upside down, you could be off to the side, and you gotta fucking you gotta get out of
dig yourself
your straps and then dig yourself out, and then hopefully because you're just sinking, the more because like the tree branches aren't strong enough to hold your weight. So it's like you're trying to like get out, and then you might be, higher than the baseline, and then you're just sinking more and more down. It's very scary.
Yeah. Well, I think
I'm not describing it well.
But no, I know exactly. I mean,
have you been in those situations?
I don't do a lot of winter sports. I've definitely been on a hike before though, where we started like post-holing, where like you got to where the snow was so deep that like every couple steps you'd just
sink.
You'd fall down to your waist. And it,
you don't have snowshoes?
Not at the time. And so it's like, well, you try to walk where other people have walked. Maybe you don't sink in.
Yeah, where it's packed down and stuff.
But like, you realize, Matt, this is going to be a very long hike. If we keep going.
Way more work than, just trekking around. This is just
going to be. And I guided one year. Last year I was guiding for a company that did like hiking tour and like sightseeing tour in like the national park. And I had a couple times hiking where like, there was a little snow and people just didn't know how to deal with it. And it was just like, I feel bad, but it's like, well, you also like, you signed up for a hiking tour and I guess maybe you didn't expect it to be snowy, but like, you're not having fun. And unfortunately, like, there's nothing I can do about it. You signed up for this and this is what we're doing today,
Yeah,
so,
dude, would you just kind of, because you've done a lot of, what tour guiding? Things like that?
I really haven't done. I mean, that was the only time that I have really ever had the title of guide.
Would you just cut it short and be like, you guys don't like this? Or would you be worried about them wanting a refund? And then like,
I would never cut it short. I try to give people options. And then if I'm ever stuck where the worst part, honestly, is when you have somebody incredibly in shape. That's the worst.
Out of shape.
No, in shape.
Oh, and they want to do a lot more than
because they're like, they're the ones that are like I did a hike one time and a guy showed up with like a marathon finisher shirt. And I'm like, this guy wants to hike 10 miles. We're doing like 4, because it's like, you have to kind of cater towards your slowest person. And most people are going to be like, even if you're in, average American in shapeness, like when you come up to altitude, you're going to be a little slower. You know what I mean? Like you might be in decent shape at sea level, but you're going to be a little slower when you're up in a mountain, But yeah, the worst is when somebody's like a speed demon and then they're going to take off and then it's like, you either have to
my authority,
or you just have to give them really good instructions of like, you can go ahead if you want, but like you need to make sure you make the turn and stop and wait
really
for us at the
taking in your own hands if you do that.
And like, I'm not going to come look for you. You got to find your way back. So no, it's been kind of something I've done as a part of some of my jobs, but I don't really have a ton of experience actually being like a guide. Usually like I was a scientist for the most part, but as a crew leader, you sometimes get into those same situations where like somebody got the job straight out of school. Maybe they've don't really know what they're doing, or maybe they're not comfortable in the particular region you're in, you know? So sometimes you do have to kind of babysit a little bit of like I remember the first time I went with a Western crew and we had to go to the South. Everybody was like terrified of like alligators and like poison ivy, and like I didn't realize how different like the environment was and stuff. But I felt like that trip, all my coworkers, I was having to be like, alligators are not really dangerous. Like, you're gonna be fine.
They're not?
Like, no, not really. I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like,
would you be like, a bear's not really dangerous because you're probably not going to run into one?
Yeah, I mean,
is that what you mean? Like, is that the...
Yeah, so the thing with me with alligators and with the field work in general...
Alligators are smaller than crocodiles?
Yeah, alligators, and they're really common in the South. So...
Alligators, not crocodiles.
Yeah, crocodiles are like... I think they have them in Florida, but I'm pretty sure crocodiles are like South America and Africa.
Okay.
And they're the ones that actually, like, in Africa, they actually eat people.
Yeah.
And that's like their goal. They're like, I want to eat a person, and I'm going to. Whereas like in America, the alligators mostly eat like fish and like rodents and stuff. So like they're not hunting a human as prey the way that a crocodile kind of is, you know?
Okay.
So
but they can get pretty big.
They can get big. And I mean, people do get hurt, you know, people do get bit and stuff. But most of the alligator related injuries are people who are like hunting alligator. And
they're actively searching.
They're like shooting at a gator and like they get bit and stuff. But also, like, I was, you know, a lot of times we would do what was called like electrofishing when we were in the water, where basically like you're using electric current to like collect fish.
So you sound very rednecky.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But it's sciencey.
It totally started by just, car batteries, and like crank telephones is actually the original.
Okay. What is it? Yeah. Explain this to me.
So back in the day, in like World War I and World War II, they used these telephones that you would crank it to generate the power. It was like a walkie-talkie, but you would crank it and it would generate the power to like run the phone.
Uh-huh.
And if you can get one of those, basically the two wires that plug into the phone, as you crank it, it creates power. And so the first electrofishers, people found out you could just dip those in water and then crank away, and the current would kind of stun the fish. But
and then they just float to the top.
Sometimes they try to run because they can kind of feel it first, but it's non-lethal the way we do it. So like you could, in theory, like up the volts and you would just, everything would
fry
die.
Everything down.
But usually we're just trying to like get it to kind of stun so we can net it, and then we can measure it, and then we can put it back.
Okay.
So that was my big thing too, is I'm like, listen, whatever you're afraid of in the water, snakes, alligators,
snakes
whatever, like you have that button. When you push that button, there's electric current in the water. Just...
Are you going to get electrocuted if you're in the water too?
No, because you're wearing like waders and stuff.
So the plastic in the waders keeps...
For the most part. I mean, occasionally, if your legs get really sweaty, the current will jump because it's more conductive. But usually, no. If occasionally you'll feel like a little tingle here and there.
But it's not enough to like kill you.
No. And it's the ones that I would be using. It was like in a backpack. So it's like a little backpack you're wearing, and it has a battery. So it's like...
If you fell in the water, you'd get killed?
No, it's because it's also it's DC current, so it's not AC. So like alternating current is what like all of our power is, and it's more dangerous. DC current is not as deadly, and that's why we use it for the fish, because it doesn't kill the fish. But no, there's a lot of safety stuff built in. I mean, you can zap yourself and it hurts, but it's very rare that you have enough power that you could actually like really.
So when you'd be going out to do your studies in the South, you'd use that. A fish would float to the top. You could do whatever. You'd run your experiments on it and then put it back, and it would still be alive.
Most of the time. Yeah. Like occasionally stuff, like really little guys, or if you get them right next to where the power's coming from. But yeah, that's what I did. Like for some of my first jobs, I'd have to do that every day, and you'd have to like cover a certain amount of ground, or you'd have to like do it for a certain amount of time to just see what all fish are there. Which it's super fun to do. It's like an awesome, like getting to put on a backpack electrofisher and push the button is like one of the coolest feelings ever. Because as soon as you push the button, you see all the fish either run or their bellies turn up, and then you just net them all, and then it takes them a while. So for that first few minutes, they're stunned. And so you can like hold them and you can measure them and you can really look at them without them flopping around. And it's just kind of a surreal experience.
Yeah, yeah.
And then within a couple minutes, yeah, they're swimming around again and
they just come back to life in a way.
Just come right back.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, similar to like if you get tased as a human, I think.
You're just
it's
like,
it's the same. Like you just
oh yeah.
you
Okay.
you know, tighten up.
Yeah, yeah.
Some fish are like carp die a lot more often because they're so muscular that they'll tense their muscles and it'll like break their own spine, which is pretty metal.
Poor things.
But now, like, I mean, recently I haven't even really been working in the science kind of world.
So you're a scientist. What was your degree? Or like, you got a bachelor's or do you have a master's?
I had a bachelor's of science. And I studied, my degree was in aquatic resource management and aquaculture. So I studied fish farming too.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I was like field biologist, field crew leader was usually like my title, or I'd be like a ecologist or biologist, mid-level or low level, you know.
You want to bring that down a little bit?
Word. But now,
yeah, it's just stiff. Yeah, maybe grab it from here.
But now, recently I haven't really been using that degree very much. I've just been kind of hustling and.
Which means what?
I just like odd jobs for people. Like I help people with like construction. I sell scrap metal. I try to help people with their gardens. That's something that I'm very passionate about. I really like agriculture, and a part of me I think would be very like satisfied if I could be a farmer like for a living, you know. But yeah, basically it just means I've been real poor. And just kind of like trying to get a little bit of science work here and there, like if I can.
Hey, does the science work pay well?
It can. It definitely can. And if I could like consistently like get hired as a consultant, then I think it could be a good thing because a couple of the skill sets I have are pretty valuable. It's just a matter of like finding and like marketing myself, you know? And then, so sometimes, you know, I'll get a project that's like significant. Sometimes I'll charge like $100 an hour and they'll be like, yep. And I'll be like, oh, damn, I should have said more.
From like government work or gardening?
That's usually more like science work. It's like somebody has already gotten the funding secured. They need someone to like build out their team. And they're like, okay, I just need to hire like a consultant that knows about this specific thing that I don't know about. And so I would get hired a lot for that. Work with my friend. An older guy that's a good friend of mine, Frank, who he kind of taught me a lot of the wetland stuff. He has his own business and he's hired me a couple of times to just be his assistant, you know, help collect the data. And he's a little older guy too. So I think it's kind of there to do some of the heavy lifting and stuff so he doesn't have to break his back as bad, you know. But yeah, so I've also just been trying really hard to do a lot of stand-up. Like I've been trying to do as much stand-up as I can. And try to, you know, it's not like you can count on it money wise, but try to like get to where I'm a little more consistently working and like, kind of like build a little higher, making a little more, you know, put in some effort into that, which is kind of like, I think I ebb and flow with that with comedy. Like I love it, but I don't always like consistently like, I'm not always like putting the effort in consistently. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's hard.
It's like I'll go real hard. It's a
grind, yeah.
I'll stay busy. I'll write a lot, and then I'll kind of like.
Or even just like lazy. The writing, and then like the work of like just being out and being like, "Hey, I want to do your shows," or like I'm capable of doing this amount of time, or like, you know, that's a whole different.
And that's hard. Like the filling the calendar, the asking for spots, like that's something that I've been doing the last few months more than I ever really have, and I kind of hate it, but it is good to be busy. You know, it's good to have a busy month and to be like, wow, I actually have a little money. I can cover some costs, you know. But I kind of, you know, I can't really keep up. I'm sort of job hunting a little bit again now, but I'm sort of torn whether I should try to kind of get a more serious job using kind of my existing skill set, or if I should just get something that complements comedy a little better.
Yeah.
Dog walking or like something a little more part-time, you know?
Yeah, it's always the toss up or, you know.
Kind of the decision. And, you know, hopefully I can, it doesn't have to be one or the other, you know, hopefully I can, a lot of times in my world, you'll be busy in the summer, because you're out collecting the data. So hopefully I can find something where I'm, I have a slow enough kind of winter season that I can still do as much stand-up as I want. Winter is kind of the stand-up season, it feels like, in Colorado.
Yeah. There's more shows going on because everybody's inside.
Yeah, and like summer can just be rough. I mean, I think it's better now, but I think always the first really warm month, sometimes it's May, sometimes it's June. It's just like you can feel it on your shows. Like it's just hard.
Like to get audience members.
Yeah, like you don't do as many like packed shows those first
tickets
warm months. Yeah,
for sure.
You kind of, for me at least, I kind of like lower my expectations a little bit. I'm like, I might be doing some half full rooms.
Yeah,
maybe working a little harder.
Yeah, I know. Comedy Works, they talk about the potato salad holidays are hard sells.
The potato salad holidays.
Yeah. 4th of July, those things. Yeah. These are people are out.
And also like, I feel like when I was a young comic, I wanted to do all those things. I was like, I want to do a bunch of 420 shows. I want to do all the 4th of July. But then you get a little older and you're like, I don't even know if obviously I'm not going to say no, but like, you're less excited about fighting for attention on a 4th of July, so to speak.
Yeah, totally.
Or like having to do your set and then like the fireworks are going off and you're like, I guess I'll just keep going.
I mean, I guess you only do that. You just do that on a bigger scale as you get old. I mean, ideally as you start like headlining or whatever. Because I mean, hear people talk about doing like for New Year's shows and stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody's just counting down to midnight or whatever, and it's like it's just a different kind of grind.
Yeah, I've never been to a comedy show like
on 4th of July.
Or on New Year's.
Yeah, me either. But I've heard like Adam Kane Holland talk about. I've heard Greg Fitzsimmons like would.
Do you do the countdown in the middle of your set?
Apparently you stop and you do it. Yeah,
and then you close up.
Yep,
wrap it up,
and then you wrap it up.
Go to your closer.
Yeah.
I mean, and I again like not that I'm too good for any kind of a gig. I will go get punched in the fucking teeth, metaphorically speaking, or hell, even literally if it pays enough. But when you do comedy for longer, you just you pick and choose a little more.
Would you say you're less hungry, or you're just more
aware?
Choosy? I don't know.
I think some of it is a little bit less hungry, but I think also it's just a little more awareness of what that show is going to be like. Like I did this year. I did the medieval festival.
You did the Renaissance Festival in Larkspur?
No, I did the medieval festival in Loveland.
Okay,
same kind of jive. Little different, more plaguey. Less
like there's less people around.
Yeah, it's darker.
The plague has taken them.
But like I knew it was going to be a challenging spot because I'm having to do some daytime comedy. So that's one of those ones. Like as a young comic, I probably would have not that I would have not made sure, but I would not have worried too much about the money. Whereas now I'm like, I'm happy to do this gig. I need to make sure it's worth my time.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's not going to be like a fun.
Yeah. It's going to be work.
It's going to be probably a little painful doing your jokes to maybe nobody. And I had to do all ages too, which I don't love. I'm to a point now where I think I can do, have a good bit of clean material, but I don't love it. I don't know. What do you think? Do you do clean?
Not really. I mean, it's never really been a focus. Although none of my stuff's like very dirty. I mean, I just recently did a show where we were in Nebraska and stuff, and I was like thinking after, I was like, I guess my stuff is more dirty than I thought it was.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, when I get in a like a more conservative / more rural area, I do more nasty jokes because I find that's what they like. For me, like a good poop joke, can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, but anal rape joke,
it's true. Yeah,
it's a little different.
Yeah, and that's a great thing about traveling too. Is like, it's just interesting to see what works in other places. A lot of times, it's not what you think.
Yeah, I tried to do a bunch of working at a pot shop stuff in Nebraska, and they were just like not into it. I had to kind of pivot. Yeah, I had to like pivot to other stuff. I'm like, well, I thought it was just like, job stuff. Like we all get working at a job sucks or whatever. But like, it was like, yeah. Well, I went to other jobs. I went to like being a server at like Olive Garden as opposed to, and they were connected more with that. I felt like, but
yeah. Did you worked in weed like early on when it first went legal, right?
Yeah, pretty early on with the legalization. Well, they did in like 2013 or something.
Yeah,
I was in it like 16, 17, I think.
I think that's kind of like, it seems like that was a good time to be in the industry.
I mean, I didn't like it. I didn't like the culture. I never really, I just thought there'd be more opportunity to make more money.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you don't give a shit about it, they really don't like you as an employee. Cause I'm just like, oh, you just want to get high. Like, yeah, one of the things I keep hearing Wana Gummies is doing ads on CityCast Denver.
Yeah.
And like their thing is like, oh, this one's good for fucking this weed gummy's good for sleeping, or this weed gummy's good for like, what even get you high? I'm like, they're just selling weed. I mean, it's like saying this whiskey's good, gonna get you fucking gonna make you go to sleep, and this whiskey's good for pain relief. And it's like, okay, maybe there's some science out there, but I mean, they're just ultimately trying to peddle their drug in whatever way
marketing.
they can. Yeah, and it's like, all right, stoner, just say you want to fucking get high. Like, don't fucking try to make it sound.
I worked a little bit back of the house.
So you can see that why they didn't like me. Management didn't like me.
Yeah, but no, I felt the same way, that it got corporate really fast. And it's just about, if you were going to, the only way you could make good money is if you were
an owner,
or you were going to put in a ton of hours.
Yeah. Which was there. And I was like, I didn't want, one of the things that made me not like the company is because they were like, oh, 4-day work week. And you have the option to work Friday. And then they're like, we kind of want you to work.
Yeah. It's not
Friday.
really optional.
Yeah. And then they're like, you have to work at least one Friday a month. And I was like, that's when I was like,
the 4-day was the whole selling point.
Yeah. 3 days. Yeah. But
yeah, that's kind of the thing, me work wise, that's got me in a bit of a pickle is, I've been on a 4-day or like a non-traditional schedule for so long. It's like, God, I don't want to go back to 5 days a week. Like 4 long days is one thing. Like I did 4-10s for a long time, and that was pretty good. But I don't know if I can go back to like 5 days a week.
It's a different grind, because even like the 4-10s, that extra day you get off is kind of recovering a little bit from the and then
it definitely is.
Yeah, so it's just like a different schedule, getting used to a different thing. But not to switch gears too much here, but last time I was on your Wolfhawk podcast, we talked a lot about Costco.
You and Lizzie talked about Costco.
Yeah, and I felt like you were left out a little bit.
Well, yeah, I think we talked a little bit about that. I just am not I don't get the same joy from buying things that a lot of people do.
Yeah, you want to go play in the mud or something. I get it.
Yeah.
But
nothing against Costco. I just don't find myself there very often.
Yeah. Well, I was at Costco earlier, and I was thinking, like, what could I get Elliot that he might enjoy?
You're trying to win me over?
Well, not win you over, but I was like, what can I show him what he's missing?
What I'm missing. Yeah.
And I was like, do I get him something that he would like and actually enjoy, maybe use, or just get him something so decadent that he wouldn't even. I was like, should I get him like 4 jars of applesauce? But what I did end up getting, some I thought, we could, got you a huge bag.
Oh, wow.
Of Bugles, Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
This is
breaking the fourth wall. You did see them just sitting there for a long time, but they are for you. These Bugles are for you.
Wow. This is incredible. It's been a long time since I've had Bugles or Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So.
And I got you a huge pumpkin pie.
Oh, shit.
First time pumpkin's back, baby. It's in.
Tis the season.
Tis the season. Got you a big pumpkin pie.
These are such great gifts.
August.
Usually I just get clips when I do a podcast,
Yeah. Well, now you get pie as well.
I'm gonna crack these open.
Well, you don't want to try the pie? I thought maybe
I absolutely.
Do you mind? If
do we have the means?
A pie, I would share it with you.
Yeah, are we gonna
we can. My kitchen's right there.
That's
we
true.
Can take a little pause if you want.
Let me crack these open.
Okay.
And then we can. Yeah, let's do an intermission.
I have had.
We'll come back with pie.
Full disclosure, I have tried the Bugles Cinnamon Toast Crunch before. I didn't want to get such a big bag at Costco. I saw a smaller bag at a Mavericks gas station here.
This is such a huge bag. I hope they're good.
Yeah. I hope so too. Or you can give them to your parrot.
Yeah.
Tastes just like the cereal.
It really does.
Yeah, it's got that Bugle wang to it, still. But
I don't hate it. I actually really like those.
Yeah, cinnamon. Yeah, can't go wrong with cinnamon. It's hard to go wrong with cinnamon, sugar.
Yeah, I love cinnamon.
And then, but it's still got that Bugle flavor for sure.
Yeah, the the aftertaste is very bugly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, would you mind sharing a little
Let's
bit,
do
and
it,
then
yeah.
you could take
Let's
it
go- let's have
back
some
to
pie.
your lady? Okay, yeah.
We can do a. We'll come back with pie.
So, yeah, just take a little break here.
That's so funny. Giant pie.
I know, but we're back. We're back with the pumpkin pie.
Delicious pumpkin pie.
Yeah, you know, we got a healthy piece here. You know, for me, and it's good. It's good for a Costco pumpkin pie.
It's a great pumpkin pie.
Crust is a little soggy, a little claggy, as they'd say
Mhm.
on Great British Baking Show. But I mean, that's what you get, and I kind of like
Stodgy.
it. Stodgy, yeah, that's the word.
You
But
don't
I
want it
like
too
it.
crunchy.
I
No,
like
it's a
it.
great. It's a great pie.
Yeah, I was at Legacy Pico recently, and they, it's almost too flaky of a crust. I was like, I want it to be a little stodgy. I don't know. That's
Yeah.
just the pies I grew up with, so that's what I want.
I was about to say, yeah, I was definitely not raised in a flaky pie household.
You aren't making lots of pies in Alabama?
Yes and no, but I guess I just mean that I don't have a fine taste. I mean, I can
You're not
appreciate it, but
Were you sweets kid? Sweets guy?
yeah, a little bit.
Too skinny to be a sweets guy.
Yeah, I mean, not too much. I mean, my parents were pretty like,
Salty.
nah, but they were like pretty conscious food wise. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay, yeah.
they
Like,
tried not to let us eat too much trash.
Yeah. Not that a
Especially,
pie's trash, but yeah.
but yeah, like not as like we definitely didn't have a lot of like any sort of like processed candy type shit around the house. Really,
Sure.
we were
You're
in
not getting store-bought pies a lot.
no, not
what you're
very
saying.
often. No, we were like an ingredients household. Are you familiar with that kind of?
Like you had the ingredients to make stuff.
Yeah,
No.
like we didn't have like ready to go snacks really.
Yeah.
Had ingredients.
We had little Debbie's. We had cereal, a lot of cereal. When I was growing up, but
yeah, we'd have a few things, but it was mostly my parents both cooked and
yeah.
my dad really did a lot of the cooking. So yeah, we didn't have a lot of like
If my
snacky
dad
things.
cooked, it was always like ground beef something. It was always like
hamburger helper.
yeah, or like tacos.
Yeah.
Just ground taco, ground up.
He just knew
ground
how to
beef.
cook any dish with ground beef in it.
I mean, I don't know. Cook is a strong word. I mean, yeah, he was no chef, but
Yeah.
if he was cooking that night, it would always be ground beef, spaghetti,
Somehow.
something. Yeah,
Yeah.
something with ground beef, and then
Yeah, my dad was really bad with kids. So he did a lot of cooking because my mom was just like, all right, we got to sort this out. So she kind of helped with homework and more the young kid stuff. And my dad, picked up in the kitchen, cooked a lot of the meals.
it's a nice.
Yeah, it's a good trade-off.
Yeah, there you go.
And I think I'm a pretty good cook now. I mean, both parents taught me a lot about, how to cook, just the technique of the basic shit,
Heat, using heat.
Yep, heat and flour and a knife.
You making your own bread? I mean, are you there fucking kneading your own dough and shit?
My fiance makes bread. I'm not much of a baker.
Oh, you're fianced.
Yeah, we got engaged.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we got engaged earlier this spring.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, very recent.
yeah, I guess in like May or something.
What was the catalyst? You're like, I gotta lock this down. I gotta get insurance. What was it?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been together for a while. So I guess really what was the catalyst? I mean, I think it was the lock it down situation. Like
You saw her eyes wandering. You're like, nope.
well, not so much, but like I didn't want her to feel like I was never gonna. I felt
Was
like
there discussions?
we had talked about it.
Did you feel pressure? Was she like, you better lock this down
Not really, but I also I knew that she wasn't gonna wait around
forever?
forever, and
Wow, she wouldn't wait forever for you,
yeah, I know, right?
dude.
But yeah, also like I felt like not that I had like some sort of a timeline in my head or whatever, but it was just like we've lived together for long enough that I felt like comfortable enough that like I knew her well, like we were pretty good living together as far as like I mean there's always some issues, but that was the big thing. It's like, okay, listen, we lived together for a couple years and it's worked out great. Like we're a good team, we're good as roommates, as housemates, and
She's
so,
cool with your not wanting to spend money.
yeah, she's she's down with my frugality.
Yeah, I mean that has to be probably a big one.
Yeah. Well, and I mean,
if she was racking up credit cards, you'd probably get it probably wouldn't work out, huh?
Yeah, no. Yeah, she's down, and she likes to make stuff. Like we've been making jam a lot recently as like fruits coming into season. So I mean, she likes the she
the
I don't know
trad wife kind of shit.
Yeah, I feel like I don't want to say that because then that puts
maybe
me
it has a bad connotation, but that's what I think of like.
But like homemakery things, like
homemaker is a.
I think of it more as almost like just like food production. You know what I mean? Like she likes to can and she helps like. And I think it's one of the things too, like since we've had a garden, I think that's been, it's a hard thing to co-run a garden, and we've done a great job of running the garden together. Like the first year we kind of each had our own separate garden because we thought we just couldn't agree on like what we wanted to plant and stuff. But now the last 2 years we've come up with kind of a plan together.
Separate beds, and they've just gradually gotten closer and closer together.
Now we just have, we garden it all, which that sounds like a dumb thing to be like, I knew she was the one when she didn't argue with me about the garden, but
Yeah, well, what was the, I mean, I think that's great, but what was what did you want to do that was separate, or that she didn't want to garden at first, and then like, what do you guys?
Oh, it was just mostly just that we just wanted to plant different stuff.
Yeah, like what?
Yeah, like, great question. Well, the big thing was I wanted to do a 2-crop rotation on everything. So I wanted to like plant a spring crop, and then I wanted to like pull all that out and then plant a summer crop.
So like squash and pumpkin and shit like that.
Yeah, like I would do like lettuce and radish first, and then I would plant, like late summer I'd plant tomatoes and everything else.
Well, the worst.
Yeah. She doesn't like radishes either. They're just easy to grow. I'm not like a radish stan, but they're very easy to start the garden with.
Okay, yeah.
They come in pretty early, but that was mostly it. Like she really liked.
And she just wanted one thing all year.
Yeah, she wanted one thing all year. And I think she wanted more peppers than I wanted to do. And I was kind of like, let's, just different. Nothing major, but yeah, minor things like that. Like she wanted to do like a bunch of jalapenos. And I'm like, that's fine, I guess. But just, little stuff like that, where also like I was more into pruning my tomatoes really hard at first. And she didn't really like pruning tomatoes. But now I've gotten her over onto my side of pruning tomatoes. So like, yeah, I guess a lot of the farming I was doing was maybe just a little more labor intensive, and she just didn't want to do that.
Yeah, you're very into it. If you wanted to do 2 yields in like a season or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I was going hard, but like I said, I like agriculture, and like
that's how a man gardens.
Well, I kind of just wanted to push it. I wanted to see if we could do it, see if, and really it's tough. The season's just not long enough in Denver, unfortunately, to do like 2 harvests most of the time. But, now we just kind of have a couple different gardens. Like we have 2 or 3 different kind of garden beds. So we now just sort of come to more of a consensus and on what we're going to plant, and we just do what needs to be done.
Is it just like a conversation you have in like March about like what you're going to plant?
Yeah, usually like February, March, we'll like kind of come up with a game plan, go through the seeds, make we have like a little map, kind of fill in a little map. And then sometimes we usually follow it pretty close, but sometimes we make it and then we end up getting way off once we actually start planting shit. But this year we did a pretty good job of
like, I meant to plant the radishes here, but guess what I put instead?
But now too, like we've been really letting stuff go to seed. We've been letting our garden like reseed itself. So that's another thing too, is like we'll just have volunteer tomato and chard and stuff like that come in. And then it's kind of like, well, do we let this grow or do we cut it to stick with the plan, But we've been more and more letting that stuff come in, like volunteer pumpkin. We just let it grow and it's doing pretty good. And chard we've been getting chard for like 5 years.
Chard is like lettuce?
No, it's more like collard greens. Or like usually you cook it.
It's like
it's a leafy green. Like, yeah.
Like lettuce?
No, it's not. It's more like, it's more like a collard green or like cabbage. Like you can eat it raw, but you probably want to cook it.
So that's the difference between collard green and lettuce? So you should cook it?
Yeah, just like more fibrous.
Yeah, I never got into cabbage. My wife does do stuff with cabbage. I just never enjoyed it. I always like had a bad smell in the house whenever my mom would make like cabbage and beef or whatever.
Well, I feel like we're of the same generation where I think like the boomer parents, like at least my parents, even though they were good cooks, didn't really put a lot of effort into making vegetables taste good.
Yeah.
They was just kind of like they would boil it or just cook the shit out of it. And then, you know, not to say that, you know, I say that to say that like it took me a while to appreciate some vegetables, I think just because of the way my parents cooked it, you know?
So you think there's a better way to do cabbage?
Well, I don't know about
basically
cabbage.
Just boil the
you don't
shit
like
out.
it, you don't like it. You know, I'm not trying to force
strong
cabbage on
taste.
anybody, but I mean, I'm picky about coleslaw. Like a lot of if a coleslaw is too mayonnaisey,
yeah, never got into slaw. I never really liked it.
I do. See, I would do a real vinegary, like
it's
kind
like
of
a southern thing, huh?
Yeah, or maybe German, because my dad, his family's like from Switzerland. He came to America. My dad was born in the U.S., but all of his siblings, his older siblings, were all born in Switzerland.
Oh.
So, you know, his mom was a really good cook, and she kind of cooked like German mixed with Southern a little bit. Because she lived in Georgia, so like ingredients wise, that's what she could get, you know. Which is kind of weird, but that's sort of how my dad cooks. You know, he kind of cooks soul food, but it's also like got some German kind of flair,
which like is more sausage.
Yeah, a lot of sausage, a lot of like potatoes and cucumbers, and
I think it's just like Europe in general. Like just like Irish, or
pretty
German.
Like meat based, and then like a lot of potato dishes.
You gotta get that protein in there, bud. You gotta start upping your protein if you want to start getting that muscle.
I know.
Is that something you worry about as a scientist, getting out there? One day you wouldn't be able to dig yourself out of a sand trap.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, I've been out in the field with guys that are in their 60s, and there's a part of me that's like, man, I hope I can still do it but I doubt it. I mean, I think I could physically do it, but I don't know if I would want to be out there in the swamp with a bunch of young guns.
Oh, yeah. So you consider yourself a young gun out there? What's the difference between a young gun in the swamp and an old gun in the swamp?
Well, I mean,
like, what are you doing? You just have more of a passion for it?
No, I mean, I was always, as a young gun and as a crew lead, I always just had the most energy of anybody. Like, I was going to...
Let's go further.
And for me, it's a little bit of a not a disregard, but like, if you're an old scientist and you're like, oh, hey, we have to get to that point, and there's this big thicket of blackberries, that's a young gun job right there. Young guy,
eat those blackberries.
He can trudge through the thicket and get all stabbed up.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I could cut that path, and then the old guys come in behind me when there's a little bit less.
So you got like a machete, and you're like
sometimes,
through,
yeah. Dude, I worked for this one company. This is hilarious. I worked for this one company. This is one of those things where it's like the joy of working for a government contractor. For safety reasons, they would not let me use a machete because it's like dangerous. And I'm like, you're right, but like, how am I supposed to?
So there's obviously an accident that happened with the guy in the machete.
I guess like, so. Just carried through and just took his foot off or something. I don't know.
Shit happens. You ever see Dewey Cox?
Yeah.
Yeah, he cuts him.
Yeah, with the machete.
Yeah.
Dude, I was just talking about that movie the other day because my fiance's never seen it.
No, it's like my favorite comedy.
God, it's so good.
Dude, and Pop Star.
It's one of those ones too with the Dewey Cox story where I feel like the first half of that, or the first 2/3, is like the perfect comedy. Like the ending gets weird. I feel like if the Dewey Cox story had a little better ending, it would be the perfect comedy movie. It just kind of gets.
I would say it's my favorite comedy. And everyone's like, "What's your favorite comedy?" I think Dewey Cox.
And I still think it's awesome.
The music is hilarious. It's great.
They so perfectly satirize all the genres. Dude.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up watching La Bamba and fucking the Buddy Holly story. So like, because it's right in there.
It's that, and it's like the Johnny Cash. It's like those are the two that it's like kind of pulling from. And yeah, the Wrong Kid Died bit is so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still love it. I just felt like it's so funny, and
he's got all those kids.
The ending is
Dewey
just
Rahim.
Yeah. The end just doesn't quite keep up with the funniness. Not that it's a bad ending, but it's just like
he like dies on the end at the end singing that song or whatever.
But just it's just so funny up front.
I was so in love with Jenna Fisher, dude. I was like, I'm in for anything she does.
Dude, John C. Reilly is fucking incredible. And honestly, so when I first came out to Colorado, I went and saw the Tim and Eric live show. Tim and Eric, awesome show, great job. And the whole second half was just John C. Reilly doing the character that he does over there, the doctor or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just him doing.
That I haven't seen too much of.
He wasn't that often, but it was so awesome to see because basically the whole first half of the show, it's like Tim and Eric. They're doing a little stand up. They're doing like sketch type. It's like it's kind of stand up, but then there's like sketch involved, so they kind of play a sketch. They have some jokes to go with it, that kind of a thing, So they do that for kind of the first half. And then the whole second half is just John C. Reilly, like kind of just doing whatever the fuck he wants. It seemed like. So he's like bringing audience members up and he's just like, it was so fun to watch because it's like, I didn't think of it as a stand up, but he was basically doing stand up, but as this character and with this live show and Dr. Brule, I think is his name. But, he's always making that face the whole time. And then he asks people and he puts the mic like in there, like touches it to their face. And like, it was just a real master to watch him like do that. And especially to do such a long bit that was crowd based where it's like, obviously he's a pro and he knows what to do if this doesn't play out. But like his whole bit was kind of based around bringing 4 or 5 audience members up. And then he did bits with them for a long time. And it's like, that's such a toss up how that's going to play out. And he does that every night at this show or whatever. And I'd already loved John C. Reilly, but seeing him live like that, I was just like, holy shit, this guy really is a true comedic genius. Like,
interesting. Yeah.
And I mean, now that I've done comedy longer, I'm sure that there was more planning that went into that. Like, I'm sure it wasn't all off the cuff the way it seemed to me at the time.
Yeah.
But it's still so impressive.
Sure. Yeah.
And especially to do all that as a character that he doesn't even play that often. It's like a character he does like at the time, he was only on a couple episodes.
Would you say doing a character is easier because you're kind of, it's not you up there, so you can take more risks.
I mean, there's risk, but I also do think that there's a certain amount of like, it's one thing to do crowd work as yourself, and it's another thing to do it when you're like in your character, I think.
To me, it seems like, well, I mean, I've done some acting and stuff, so I guess being a character is like, it's not me, so it doesn't matter.
It's true. There's definitely something freeing about it, but I also think that like there's the challenge of staying in your character and then staying in their line of humor, which for me was always tough just because like if I like, I'm so ADD that like if I think of something really funny, it's like, oh shit, I got to remember to be in the character instead of just blurting it out instantly.
So you wouldn't think of a joke as your character when you were doing it, because if people don't know, Elliot would then how I was introduced to you was as Mike Hawkburns, which is like a character you used to do on stage.
Yeah, sort of like a Southern accent, Mark Twain sort of, which I still do occasionally.
Yeah. So you weren't embodying that character so much that like you thought of things in that character's voice. You would think of things as Elliot Broder, and then like, how do I filter this
sometimes
into a Mike Hawkburns thing?
Yeah, I would say generally.
And what's the difference?
What is the difference? That's a good question. I mean, honestly, I felt like when I was doing the character Mike Hawkburns, I was just a lot more willing to just kind of play into the stereotypes comedically, as far as like
Southern
stereotypes, but also just staying on like what I consider your common comedy subject matters, like being a little bit more like talking about relationships and politics and women and stuff. Whereas like I try as myself to not talk about what I consider the really common subject matters. Not to say that I don't have any sex or poop jokes, but I'm not like sitting down like, all right, today I'm writing 10 dick jokes. It's usually like, hey, I want to write about a subject matter that's not well tapped.
Like what are you doing that's not well, I mean, what's working for you right now? That follows that.
I've been doing a joke recently about how my girlfriend has this masturbating parrot.
Okay, yeah.
So that's kind of it's a real life thing, but it's also kind of unique. And so I've been doing it as more of a bit where I start talking about people's pets, like you guys got dogs and everyone has dogs. Uh-huh. And then kind of anybody have an exotic pet? Usually they don't. But if they do, I try to, I get into that too.
Sure.
And then, just talking about that, I feel like I say that there's a lot of parrot jokes out there, but
I mean, yeah, it's not.
But I even say that in the joke.
How do you stay away from relationship stuff? I mean, that has to be such a big part. You can't
stay away now. And I try to be like,
But it's the parrot thing is, it's its own.
Yeah. So I mean,
makes it unique.
I say that like, yeah, it is obviously unavoidable, and you have to be relatable. Like, you can't get so into left field that you can't relate to anybody. But yeah, like the parrot stuff is something that, and I've been trying to talk a little more about like kind of my work background, which is a common subject matter.
Very
talk
interesting.
about work, but weird shit that I've done as like a guide and a fish farmer. Like, I used to be a trout farmer, which is kind of a weird job you can do.
Weird thing to farm,
and but also I find that some of the jokes that I stick with are just, when you do have a joke that fits into that common subject matter, it's really good. I'm not going to do it.
So Mike Cockburn wouldn't talk about a masturbating parrot if he came across it.
Probably not. If he did, it would fit into a very hacky talking parrot setup type joke, But also I feel like I'd be more likely to like, just as Hawkburns, it is a little more gloves off, like a lot more like roast type stuff. Like I did Hawkburns for Roast Battle recently, and I was like, this is perfect. I had done Roast Battle as myself, and I had a good time, and I was okay. I didn't win my battle. I wasn't super funny. No, let me take it back. I think my jokes were good, but I didn't win, and I wasn't like super stoked on it because I didn't love roasting. But as Hawkburns,
yeah, roasting is something I'm not into.
It's a weird, and I was roasting somebody that was like a pretty good friend, and I feel like I would have rather it been someone I didn't know quite as well, because I feel like, oh, we're actually friends. I don't want to go too hard,
you didn't want
and also I don't want to get in the weeds. Like, I know this person on a personal level, and I'm not going to be like, oh, so you guys know about his ex-girlfriend, right? Or like, I don't,
Yeah, you weren't trying to hurt this person, but then
it's a friend, so it's kind of this weird, like, I know them well enough to know.
When you put up
stuff.
the bumper things on comedy, it's not as good.
But as Hawkburns, it was perfect because in the character, I love roasting a lot more. And I also think there's something extra like searing about a Southern person making fun of you for being dumb. It's just extra offensive to people because they just assume that you're dumb because you have a Southern accent,
I think it sounds smart sometimes.
It does. But
like a Southern lawyer?
I did a lot more
charming.
I did a lot more short jokes as Hawkburns too. I did a lot of like one-liners.
Yeah.
Which I just don't as myself. Also, it's a lot of work to do a bunch of one-liners.
Everyone says like the English accent sounds really sophisticated or whatever. I think that sounds dumber than a Southern accent.
Dude, especially in Ireland. I was in Ireland and they sound really dumb, dude. And they are. Like,
yeah, they're dumb.
No, I mean, they're fine. But it was weird because I had always thought, like, growing up in the South, I always had this idea that, like, if you live on the British Isles and you have that accent, you have to be smart.
Right.
Or, like, at least your public education system's
they're
like
just
good.
as trashy as we are here.
Exactly.
If not more.
They have the same dumb beliefs that we do,
It's like, we didn't invent racism. Europe.
But no, it's I don't know. I guess the two have gotten somewhat melded, but really it's just a rougher character. Like, it's just a little more blue, like as Hawkburns, I'll be a little meaner. If I do and get into like a crowd work a bit, I'll actually like
so you feel a little freer to just do more to
kind of be a little nastier,
like a little extra in a way. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, just a little nastier. And like, I've never been a comedian that like wanted to be like one of these like pushing boundaries, but Hawkburn's a little bit more into that.
Edgelordy in a way.
Yeah, a little more edgelordy, a little more kind of wanting to get a reaction here and there. Yeah, and
so you must like that at a certain level.
I think I've said this, but I think if you're not a bad person, it's fun to play a villain. And so I kind of designed the character to be a little bit of a villain, and so like it is fun. I think if you are a nice person, then it's fun to play a villain.
I think that's good. Yeah, makes sense.
And I also think too that like I kind of liked at the time when I first started coming into kind of a newer comedy scene, it felt like there needed to be a little bit of a villain. Not that it was needed, but as much as I love being in a good supportive comedy scene, there are occasionally people that try to make their way into our scene that maybe someone does need to bully them out. And I feel like Hawkburns was definitely down to do that. Interesting. Down to bully somebody. If I felt, not like just for the hell of it, but if I felt like, what's this guy's deal? Like, I don't trust him. Maybe I shouldn't be nice to him.
I feel that way about a lot of people.
Until I determine they're not a creep, I'm just going to assume. Well, it's a bad attitude to have in comedy, but
Yeah.
but
I mean, I get it though.
But yeah, I mean, especially like you and I have done this for long enough that you see so many undesirable people come through that you do put up a little bit of a wall, especially to a new comic, because you're like, what the fuck is this person doing?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? But that's also ultimately why I got away from doing the character, because I started
it's like a wrestling thing. You wanted to be a heel a little bit,
but I found that there were other people in comedy that did that kind of thing. And I loved Andy Kaufman too. So I liked the whole like fucking with people aspect of it, of like, am I actually a different person? Can I get I almost wanted to do like Andy Kaufman used to do with his character of like, can I get someone else to play this character that looks enough like me that I can do an elaborate multi-character, But that's also, I think, why I got away from the character, is because I started meeting other character people in comedy.
Like a William Montgomery. I was curious on what you thought were.
Yeah, like a William Montgomery is a positive example. But on like the other end of the spectrum, there's people who I can't think of any of their names right off, but there's people who are somewhat notorious for being these like Andy Kaufman wannabes that are just psychopaths.
Michael Isaacs.
Yeah, no, I don't know. But like, they're so weird to a point that you almost can't trust them as a booker. You know what I mean? And like, or you can't trust them to like be on their good behavior, or, or like there's this one guy who used to be in Fort Collins, and
Jacob Erdman.
No,
he didn't bring you up in like a bad way or anything when I had him on the pod. But that made me realize, I guess Elliot's been around a lot longer than I give him credit for here in the scene.
Because me and Jacob started a show up in Fort Collins. Forever
ago.
But
in the before times.
Yeah.
Before the
times.
comedy Fort times.
Yeah. But yeah, like so I realized that if you're playing a character and you're true to it, you may get lumped in with some of these people that are like
an Austin Black.
Yeah, well, I don't want to name any of these people that are in the scene, because these are like, I'm talking about like a more extreme version of somebody that's like blackballed places, there was this guy in Fort Collins even before my time, and I don't remember his name, but he like did this fake Irish character.
Oh yeah.
Do you know about this guy?
Yeah. No, I'm thinking a French accent.
Yeah. But this guy
would do an Irish
French accent. He did an Irish accent. But he would do fucked up shit. Like he would bring people on the road. He'd be like, oh yeah, I got a run of 3 or 4 shows. And he would like bail on them and like leave them.
Whoa.
And he would like
That's crazy.
He would do all these pranks that he thought were funny, but they were just mean.
Yeah,
where he would like, he'd get people really drunk, and then he'd like rip all the bedding off their, or like, I've heard weird stories about this guy.
Okay, yeah, I don't know who this is.
I don't know who it is either. I never met him, but like Tobias Livingston and like French accent had all had bad experiences where like he had like promised them to work or whatever, and then had fucked them over. And like, it's one thing if it's like, oh, it fell through, but it's another thing if it's like, obviously he intended to kind of maliciously like,
yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah. And so I started hearing more and more about people like this. For every William Montgomery that's like, this guy's kind of crazy, there's somebody that's like, oh no, this is someone that's actually crazy that people are like, don't want to work with.
Yeah.
Or don't trust.
It's like malicious in a way.
Just they've taken it too far. And I mean, I feel like there's already enough kind of borderline mentally.
And I was just naming people that I saw in this picture over here. So I was like,
no, but I think some of those people do kind of fall a little bit into that category of like, if you're doing something weird, it can hold you back to some extent until you've kind of proven that the weird thing you're doing is like gonna work,
Yeah.
People are just wary of working with you.
I mean, when William Montgomery came to town, I remember people like laughing at him in the back of the room, being like, this guy's fucking crazy.
Insane.
And then he like slowly won them over until they were like, oh, this guy's a genius.
Yeah, because it's like, and he's
which I think is a strong word, but
but it's one of those things where when he's one of those people where you just can't tell if he's fucking with you.
Yeah.
At all times. And that rubs people the wrong way.
Yeah, I didn't trust it. There's something about that I don't trust. I can't like.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. And honestly, if I had not met William before he moved to Denver, like if I hadn't met him in Memphis.
You knew him pre.
Yeah, if I hadn't like met him in Memphis and he and I hadn't had
met him in Memphis.
Had some genuine conversations.
Okay, so he is like playing a character.
To some extent.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a heightened version of him.
Yeah, it is genuine. Like he really is off the walls.
Yeah.
But I do think he kind of fucks with you a little more.
Yeah.
He leans into it.
Yeah.
But it is a weird, like I do think he's one of those people that to some extent maybe is a little something going on where it's like he doesn't quite understand human interaction.
Yeah, there's some he's on the spectrum somewhere.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah,
Which I like, both my parents are engineers, so I feel like I can relate to those people a lot, you know? Like there's definitely some people in my family that would maybe fall into that Asperger's kind of, you know. I feel like, I mean, engineering, it's one of those, like, you're probably the most autistic people
You're
work in that
hyper-focused on
world.
something.
Yeah. And, you know, like my dad, I think maybe, like I was talking about, he wasn't great with kids, you know, like, you know, I don't know if I'm now like diagnosed as ADHD, but like, I kind of thought I might have autism a little bit.
Sure.
Just because I had some quirks about me that, you know.
Did those go away as you stopped drinking, or because you're like sober now?
I'm sober now. It definitely helped a little bit. And I also found that like I was kind of set up for alcoholism because I didn't really have the self-control. And so that's kind of one of the weird things when I got diagnosed, that she's like, yeah, people that have this, like people who have the type of ADHD that you have, really high occurrence of like substance abuse. And she told me something that I thought was like kind of insane. I don't quite remember the numbers on this, so don't quote me. But she said something like 65% or like 60 something percent of people that are seeking treatment for alcohol abuse also are neurodivergent, either like ADHD or something. Like it was a really high like comorbidity of like, if you're seeking like medical help with quitting drinking, there's a good chance you have ADHD basically.
No, yeah, I get that. You know,
but no, I think also I didn't understand that so many of the things, I mean, really, I didn't understand any of those things until I like went about the process of getting diagnosed, you know? And then I kind of found out that like, you know, it's a spectrum disorder, like autism and ADHD are more and more like getting kind of connected. And they think that in the future, they'll both be considered the same kind of disorder on a spectrum. But yeah, like I had to like sensitivity to sound and smell was something that I had noticed like would cause me to like have a lot of anxiety or even like a freak out situation, you know? But I didn't realize that ADHD can also have that same like sensitivity. I thought that was kind of just an autism thing, but apparently people with ADHD also have that same, can have some of those same symptoms really.
Yeah.
But I'm not, I also found that like my awkwardness in social interaction, it wasn't because I didn't understand. It was because I didn't have self-control. And that was something that was a real eureka moment. It was like, oh, I'm not like bad at this because I don't know how this works. I'm bad at this because I just said it before I thought about it. And now I've offended them inadvertently because I just wasn't thinking. I was just talking, you know?
And, you know, you didn't really feel that way or something. It's just like a reaction.
Yeah. Or not that I didn't feel that way, but just that like I thought of it.
You wouldn't have put it in that way if you
more just
some
like
more time.
I thought of it, thought it was funny, immediately said it before I thought about who I'm talking to.
Right, yeah.
My audience.
Yeah.
You know, like a good example I gave them when I was in there is I talked about how when I was a crew leader, I did this project where we had to filter water, and we filtered it with this little hand pump, and you had to pump it. And there was a lady on my crew, and she was like pumping the water, and she was complaining that like her hand hurt or something. And I was like, made a joke, and I shouldn't have made this joke because I was like her boss, but I was like, you know, your boyfriend will thank you because like her grip strength would be everybody laughed. Pretty funny joke, but like, should, you know, as soon as I said it, I was like, fuck, I'm probably going to have an HR meeting whenever I get back, you know? Can't be making hand job jokes.
Yeah. When you said you used that as an example and you were in it, in what?
That was like when I was getting diagnosed and she asked me for an example
like your doctor?
Of like a weird social interaction or some time that I had gotten myself in trouble.
Okay.
You know? Yeah. And that was kind of an example I used.
So part of being diagnosed is like talking about awkward interactions you've had?
A little bit, yeah. Well, I was trying to parse out, is this an autistic thing or is this
just a being dumb thing?
Yeah.
Or like not being able to read social things or whatever.
Yeah. Like, is this because and that's what she asked me. She was like, did you know that you shouldn't have said that? And I was like, yeah, almost immediately as I said it. Yeah. I knew that I probably shouldn't have said it, you know? And she's like, well, that's the difference. Like, if you hadn't known, then I would say you're autistic, but you knew better. You just couldn't stop yourself because you thought it was really funny.
Yeah, I said dumb, but I meant like in a sillier way. Just like being like, oh, dumb mistake, not like
exactly
you're dumb and that's why you did it. Like,
but no, I mean I am pretty dumb. I mean like
silly things happen.
Yeah, dumb like can't talk.
Dumb like
like a dog, like dumb, deaf, and blind. Like a
okay, like you can't hear.
Did you know
you can't speak is dumb.
Can't not talk.
Deaf is when you can't hear. See, that was something dumb I said. So anyway, well, man,
well, we're kind of bounced all around.
Yeah.
I think,
but I mean that's like that's part of the podcast.
It is.
Yeah,
I also really enjoyed that you kind of asked me like leading questions about like wetlands. Nobody ever really seems to give a shit about wetlands.
No, it's an interesting thing, and I just like listened to that thing about Venice, and I was like, that's so interesting.
That's so fascinating to me. I've never been to Venice, but I would love to go. I guess time's ticking.
Set something up with your government work.
Time's ticking.
Because it's sinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I meant.
It's gonna be gone. But
I keep saying that about everything.
Yeah, I mean we probably have
California,
longer than we think.
And he's a scientist, so
yeah, you can take my word for it. Go ahead and pollute, guys. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, you can just pay more.
But yeah, I mean,
but it has to be frustrating.
It is, and I think it's one of those things too. Like, being informed about things, it can be really frustrating. Like knowing stuff. I think conservatives have it right. Like, if you don't know stuff, I mean, ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance is bliss. Yeah,
knowing stuff is frustrating.
Wow. Those are good words to...
Yeah, woe is me, I know, right? The listeners are like, yeah.
Burdened with knowledge.
Just, God, guys.
Did you say you're burdened with glorious purpose?
No, I'm very purposeless.
Okay. Well, don't tell your fiance.
No, I mean, I know what I want out of life, but I don't have any, like, career
just 2
ambition.
yields in a season.
Yeah, I just want 2 crops.
Yeah, I don't know if
I want to be able to go fishing a lot and not live in abject poverty.
All good aims.
Seems attainable.
Well,
but, still working on it, I guess.
Aren't we all?
It's a marathon, not a sprint, as they say.
That's true. That is true. Well, I know we didn't talk a lot about comedy, but, there's a lot more interesting stuff. I thought so. I would appreciate you coming in.
I like that too. I think talking shop has its like limits, and I love talking about comedy, but I get less of an opportunity to talk about weird shit like different kinds of wetlands.
Yeah, and I like when people want to talk about the thing that they
have passion for.
Yeah.
I mean,
Tanya Sabrina came in and she didn't want to talk about her job, and I was like, "This sounds very interesting, though."
Yeah, you're like you do physics or something.
Yeah. She was like, "Yeah, physics." I'm like, "This is crazy," and she's like, "I don't want to talk about it."
Well, and I'm in a good position too because I don't work for any of these companies now, so I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm
she
not
does
bound
work.
by
She
any
does
kind of
like work for it.
I'm not bound by any
code of conduct.
Non-competition. What's the word I'm looking for? Like I can talk about all this. It's work that happened in the past.
Sure.
So I'm not worried about
getting sued.
Yeah, or like losing a job that I don't have.
Well, I appreciate you being willing to talk about stuff.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, you should check out Wolf Hawk Comedy Podcast.
Yep.
I was recently on it. We get a little
really
bit
good
into
episode.
Yeah, we talk more comedy, a little bit about the Mike Cockburn's Elliot Broder.
Yeah, talk about our beef that we buried finally years later.
We did it on that podcast. Yeah,
we squashed it.
So,
and now we're eating pie together. Look at us.
Oh yeah, we did. We broke pie together.
We broke pie.
Did you like it?
It's really good. I know I haven't been eating it. I've just been talking too much.
I do like the custard based pie.
I would say at home I do sweet potato more than pumpkin.
Whoa.
But this is a really good pumpkin pie.
Do you do crust on the sweet potato pie, or is it just the filling in a pan?
No, I do the crust.
Oh, interesting.
But nothing on top.
Same as like the marshmallow. Pie. You don't do the. Sometimes I like the marshmallow. I mean, like a s'more. You don't get a lot of the burnt marshmallow taste on a lot of things. So
occasionally I'll do like a sweet tater casserole with marshmallows on top.
Sweet tater. Is that sweet potato? Same thing? Okay.
But you just kind of mash it up. Usually there's like cranberries in it or something.
Okay. It's like what makes it a casserole over a pie?
Just no crust.
No crust, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's when I think of sweet potato. That's what I think of. It's like just in a jar or in a pan.
Yeah. More of like a casserole.
Yeah. A casserole dish.
Casserole.
You a fan of hot fruit? That's something else I heard on.
Hot fruit?
Yeah, like an apple pie or
yeah. I would say like food wise, I'm really not picky. There's very few things that I'm like, no. Like I'll even eat like most organ meat and stuff. I'll eat like Rocky Mountain oysters and chicken liver and.
Like if you had to, or is that something you?
I mean, I'm not seeking it out. Yeah, I'm not seeking it out, but like I'm not grossed out by very many foods.
Yeah, you don't seem very food motivated.
I mean, I would say less so than a lot of folks.
Yeah.
But I think also when you know how to cook, it takes that away a little bit,
Yeah, I was listening to something they're saying like the preparation of food like helps with the satiety and stuff like that. So it's like when you can just go to the fast food restaurant and get whatever you want.
Oh yeah,
and then you just like eat more than you need.
The process of making it, like
helps
gets your appetite,
feed your soul or something as well, so that you're not also just eating to fill a void in your soul.
I mean, they do call it soul food, so.
Yeah, I'm not a big collard greens guy. I don't like it.
Yeah,
didn't grow up eating it, so I'm just like, I don't want soggy lettuce. That's how I think of it.
Yeah, I mean,
they're like, no, it's spicy. I'm like, that's even worse.
Do you like sog though? Like at an Indian place? You ever get sog? Like sog paneer?
Nope, never had it.
All right, well.
Like Indian.
It's made with spinach. But it's basically like spinach that's cooked.
Yeah, no. Don't like cooked spinach.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, teach their own.
In sog, really it's just like it's just the rice and a sauce,
Do you like a lot of dairy-based sauces? Being Swedish or whatever you're saying?
Swiss. Yeah. I grew up with a lot of, like my dad would always make macaroni and cheese from scratch. He taught me how to make a cheese sauce like pretty young. And yeah, my dad, if I go home, he's always got stinky cheese, like really stinky cheese.
Dairy-based sauces. Like I feel like my wife will do stuff with like, stuff with like beets and like something else, but it's like a very creamy sauce. I'm like,
rich.
Cream-based sauces I'm not as into.
Yeah, my dad would
I think it's a European thing versus
he would do a lot
Latin American thing.
In general, I would say my dad's food was pretty rich. Yeah, and dairy heavy for sure. Because I mean, he grew up on a dairy farm,
right?
So like
that'll do it.
His mom, dairy was in fucking everything because it was free. They would skim it out of the tank and serve it.
Crazy.
Yeah, hard to believe that wasn't that long ago. That
I do love ice cream though.
I'm a big ice cream lover.
Ice cream's the best.
My fiance is like, she's not lactose intolerant, but she's trying to reduce her dairy because she has like a sensitivity. So I've been doing a lot of like non-dairy ice cream, and I've been using a lot of like coconut milk in my like rich sauces and things, and it's a fine replacement, but I prefer, I can handle the dairy, so I prefer to eat it.
Take a Lactaid pill if I need to.
Exactly.
For sure.
If I'm gonna go hard,
it's worth it for me. Yeah.
Yeah, my oldest.
If you're making mac and cheese from scratch, like you gotta have a Lactaid pill.
Gotta have them on the ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, my oldest sibling has got me onto the Lactaid pills because they are.
As you get older, it just helps.
Yeah, and they're like pretty bad with lactose, but
I think as you get older, your body can't process it the same.
No, I definitely.
That's science.
I mean, when I was in my 20s, I feel like I could eat a whole thing of ice cream.
I mean, I could eat a whole thing of ice cream,
I would feel it.
No, I shouldn't.
I would have to like not have any morning plans the next day just in case.
I'm more worried about the sugar content than I am the effect of the dairy on
your digestive, on your shitting.
Yeah.
Like we're like dancing around it. We're just talking about shitting a lot.
Well, I'm worried about diabetes more so now than
the beaties.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely a thing.
So I'm lifting, bro, so my muscles absorb all the fucking
getting big
sugar. That is the thing. Did you know that?
Yeah, your body will burn. Like
your muscles absorb sugar.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So the bigger your muscles,
the more sugar you can eat.
Yeah. Perfect correlation.
Shit, you might have just motivated me to start working out, dude.
You should, dude. You should start lifting, bro.
You might have done it.
Nice. There you Well, thank you so much for coming in. Where can people find
thanks for having
you?
me.
You got anything coming up?
Let's see.
It'll be a couple weeks.
Yeah. I'm doing the Second Chance comedy show, a big sobriety comedy show in October at the Bug Theater.
Okay, cool.
Joseph Hussman. I don't know if you've seen. He's been doing a couple of these shows, but he it's a sober kind of event, and he raises money for a like a place that helps people get sober.
Okay.
And then, the focus of the show is to generally talk about sobriety and try to make it funny and cool. I don't think I'm going to make it cool, but I'm going to make it funny. I've got some pretty good bits about it. So that's probably the only show on the horizon that's kind of a little more exciting. So that's early October at the Bug Theater.
Okay, cool.
That's kind of the only thing on my calendar that's exciting. But otherwise, follow me. I'm at Mr. Mr. Mike Hawkburns on most stuff, or Mike Hawkburns. I'm on TikTok. I do a lot of gardening videos, and then on YouTube, I'm under my real name. I have a YouTube, just Elliot Broder, which I'm trying to like post more, just like clips of my stand up and maybe some sketches on a little more regular basis. I only have a couple of videos up there, but I'm going to try to do like a monthly stand up or sketch clip onto my YouTube if I can remember to if I can be consistent.
Yeah.
And then we're Wolfhawk Comedy on Instagram. We have a monthly show every first Friday, and we have a podcast as well. So
with IDK,
over at Dude IDK Studios, which
you like them?
I do. It's
good.
I like what he's doing. Running shows over there. I haven't done a show there yet, but it's a really nice space, and I think he's actually about to increase his space a little bit, where you can have more like 100 seats in there for a show, which will be
knock down a wall or something.
Mm-hmm, yeah, he's renting the place next door and gonna have about twice as much space. So
okay, cool.
That'll be exciting to see. I think I'm all for more venues. I think until Denver is just so saturated, just keep them coming. As much comedy opportunity as we can handle.
Yeah. Faux show.
All
right, man. Well, I will let the guests sign us off however they see fit. I do say Wakanda forever, be excellent to each other, and then however you want to.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for listening, and thanks for just being cool.
All right. Enjoy that pie and the beauty.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, I can't wait.